have will. An earthworm does not have will. Dogs don't have will. So you have to have intellect to have will. So that's the definition of God is intellect. So therefore, he has will. And he has will. So the very fact that he has intellect means he has will.
Yeah, Adrian commented, by the way, this is from a little while back. My other live stream went down, so I've been highly distracted.
Is
I'm
anybody
so
able
sorry.
to watch us?
No, I hope so. I literally, one YouTube went down and then the other one went down after I fixed the first one. I was like, please stop falling apart on me. I don't even know why, but Adrian commented, what is the purpose of life? To know, to love, and to serve God in this life in order to be happy with him in the next. And I think that was what the answer to the Baltimore Catechism. Sounds very Baltimore Catechism.
Yeah, it really does. So, okay, here's the example I like to use. I'll probably use this in this program before, but if you had your pet dog here with you, do you have a pet dog, William?
Yeah, we have a puppy.
Okay. What's his name?
Gus.
Okay,
that's an adorable name.
Gus was here and we put a donut on the table here, right? Let's just say like a Bavarian cream filled donut, right? Gus would look at it and you would look at it, okay? You and Gus would both have a draw towards that donut. I'm trusting, right?
Yeah.
And in one regard, it'd be the same thing. It'd be through the sensitive appetite, right? You would desire it from your sheer like sensitive appetite, and he would too.
Oh yeah.
All right. But the difference with you is that you can know the essence of donutness. Okay.
Yes.
Gus wouldn't know donutness, right?
Right.
So that's where you would have
just knows deliciousness.
Yeah.
He's like, I know that's gonna taste good.
Yeah. So I mean, but Gus doesn't know that either because Gus can't process these thoughts, right? Gus just is like, I'm gonna get that. Right. So you have a will because you have an intellect. Okay. So you can intellectually desire it and sensitively desire it at the same time.
Right.
And your intellect also can come in and say, you know what? I don't think I need that donut, right? So you can make a decision not to eat it, right?
I mean, mine like never makes that decision, but okay, I don't know.
Yeah, hypothetically,
I was
somebody
say, hypothetically.
saying that they make that decision. Okay, so that's will. So God. So now we've established that God is his intellect, he is his will, and so he has a will. All right. So you want to move on? Okay.
Sure.
All right. So now the next question, interestingly, that Thomas asks is whether God wills things apart from himself. Okay, so he is himself and the perfect, blessed Trinity and all the interaction between the three persons of the Trinity and all that. And so does he go outside of the Trinity and will things outside into the world? Okay, so what do you think of that?
I think we used all of our smarticles up in the last 2 weeks, Dave.
Yeah,
I don't think we have anything left.
Nothing left, right? Okay.
I
so,
mean, I would think so.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
I'm not sure.
Yeah, because how could anything even happen? Like for example, if I say I want to unite myself to the will of God, well, that means that there's some like kind of there's some relationship between me and God in regard to his will, right? Okay.
Yeah.
So it says here, God wills not only himself, but other things apart from himself. This is clear from the comparison which we made above. For natural things have a natural inclination not only toward their own proper good, to acquire it if not possessed, and if possessed to rest therein, but also to spread abroad their own good amongst others as far as possible. Hence, we see that every agent, insofar as it is perfect and in act, produces its like. It pertains, therefore, to the nature of the will to communicate as far as possible to others the good possessed. So if you want to like a quick answer, and I talked to Adrian on Catholic Drive Time this morning, it's like, what does God want? He wants to communicate his goodness. Okay?
Yeah.
So that would be the short answer. So God is like absolute perfect goodness. And how does he communicate his goodness? Well, he makes a world. He gives us intellect and will. He allows us to participate. He gives us the Blessed Mother. And so it's just like this like nonstop like gift giving that God participates in. Okay, does that make sense?
For the most part, yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so God wants to communicate his goodness. And we do the same thing. I even mentioned on Catholic Drive Time this morning how Toya during Sherathons talks about getting the warm fuzzies. Okay, so why do we get the warm fuzzies? And you probably don't know what we're talking about.
No, I have no idea.
So I like to say that when you donate to Guadalupe Radio Network, you get the warm fuzzies. Because like
Yeah.
when you do something, when you do something good, if it, maybe around the Christmas time, and you're volunteering, at a homeless shelter or something, you get the warm fuzzies.
Yeah. So why is that? Why is it in our very nature to feel good when we help somebody? Have you ever
That's a
like
good
gone up to
question.
somebody and asked them directions, and they're like, like they people love to help other people.
Yeah,
you
people
know?
love when
true.
you offer them
Unless you're
the
in New York,
opportunity.
then they'll just tell you.
Or anywhere in the Northeast, and you're in their way, man, you are nothing. You are not even a human being.
Yeah, but go up to an average person, a decent person, and just say, hey, I'm looking for this or that, and people just want
They want to be
help.
helpful. Yeah.
Yeah, they want to be helpful. It's kind of built into us, and so that's kind of a little bit of a representation of like how we mirror God in that we want to communicate our goodness. I mean, we want to be good friends. We want to love. We want to help those who need our help and that kind of thing. Okay, so all right. So God communicates His goodness. We communicate His goodness, and then He says, whatever God wills, He wills necessarily. Okay.
So whatever God does,
Like,
is it necessary?
is it like necessarily like it has to be?
Oh,
Does
no
it?
idea.
That's it. Okay, so let me read this part. In
Please.
willing an end, we do not necessarily will things that conduce to it unless they are such that the end cannot be attained without them. As we will to take food to preserve life, or to take ship in order to cross the sea. Okay, so God wills His own goodness necessarily, but He doesn't will everything necessarily. Okay, so like for example, if He said, "I will that William will never tell another lie the rest of his life." Okay, if He willed that necessarily, then you become a robot, right?
Right.
Because he's allowing that to not be the case.
Right. Because if that were the case, I wouldn't be able to choose whether I
Yeah.
wanted to do that thing or
Gotcha.
not.
So he,
Yeah, that makes sense.
yes.
So he does. But he does will of necessity some things like the bird's going to build the nest. And the beaver's going to build the dam,
Right.
and the fish are going to swim in the stream, and that kind of stuff. Okay, they don't have any free will, but things with free will are able to kind of thwart the will of God a little bit. Okay, so and then he goes on to this interesting question: is the will of God the cause of things?
Oh.
Okay, so
Well, because
somebody,
wait, but what does it mean by cause of things?
Okay, so let me give you an example.
Please.
Okay, so Sissel is a bartender.
Yes.
Okay, at a restaurant. And
He's not making that up, by the way. That is actually real.
this
in
is a
case anyone's wondering.
real
This
case
is a real
scenario.
case
Okay, so somebody comes up and says, "I'd like a margarita."
Okay.
Okay, so in your mind, you are now going to will that a margarita be made.
And I don't drop it.
And
That's what I do every day.
and that you don't drop it, right? So you will, but then, okay, so it starts in your mind, and you're going to carry out your will by getting the lime juice and the tequila, and so you're gonna kind of do it. But it all started with you saying, "I will to make a margarita," right? So God doesn't have to like make the things physically. He doesn't have to
Right.
say, "Oh, I think I'm going to build a tree."
Right.
I'm gonna make a kangaroo. But just the very fact that He wills it, it happens.
It just happens. Yeah.
It happens because he's pretty cool that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not how my margaritas happen. Can confirm.
But imagine if that was the case, where all like somebody says, "I'll take a margarita,"
He's like, "Phew."
and there it is.
And my tips would be like,
I know.
so like she's instantaneous.
Everybody like, "Have you heard of the Sissel, the bartender
like,
man? You just
Drinks
mentioned
are going out like that.
You just mentioned that you want a margarita, and
it's like a margarita pop.
It's right there.
And there be none of my human imperfections on it either. Of like, I accidentally did a slightly under or over pour of tequila or something. You know.
Yeah, I know. Can I do a favor and ask James? Would you mind getting me a water? Because I'm getting. I had to.
I meant to have waters in here for you too.
Where's
I'm
the
sorry.
waters? I mean,
See,
do
Dave,
you
you
guys
leave
want
for
one also?
yeah, sure. You leave for a couple weeks, Dave, and we don't We have got nothing.
I know, no waters. I mean, I'm here parched. I can hardly talk. All right, so hopefully everybody is following along as we talk about the will of God, and and I've taught this a number of times to students, and so many of you are kind of reading this for the first time, and so it's a little bit more challenging. But are we ready to move on? Okay, so
Yes.
you got it? Okay, so
I like margarita examples, by the way. If we can continue teaching the Summa through margarita examples.
All right, any other comments? Anybody?
Yeah, let me just talk to a couple people really quickly. Lori is watching on Facebook, and she was letting me know that the Facebook stream has been perfect. No, besides, the YouTube one's going on and off here.
Okay,
But
okay.
we're still holding strong right now on YouTube. And Forrest joined us.
Oh, all right. Forrest, how you doing?
Yeah,
Yeah,
so-
Forrest has been around for like
I
forever,
know.
hasn't he?
We love Forrest. So, and then Adrian says, Dave, have you tried photosynthesis?
Have I tried it? Like, what
Yes.
does that mean?
I'm going to ask him to clarify that.
I don't know. I don't know what I try. I try breathing as a result of the process of photosynthesis, but I can't photosynthesize because try as I may, it's not in my nature to photosynthesize, right? It's pretty
That's
cool
sad.
though. I think I've said before when I first learned about the photosynthesis process, and to this day I am absolutely fascinated by trees. I mean, there are trees like everywhere, and I notice like all of them. I just find them fascinating creatures because of what they do, and they're so like simple and they're
Yeah.
kind of plain looking,
They're
but
interesting, yeah.
they're very interesting creatures. They do a lot of
They
good.
do.
They serve humanity.
Instead of drinking water, never mind, it's a reference that we clearly did not get.
Okay, is that what Adrian said?
Yes.
Okay, does he want to explain
I
that?
said, let us know what the reference is from so we know what we're missing out on as far as how we're not cool in
Yeah.
is it a pop culture reference? I don't know. I either get them or I don't.
See, Adrian had me on this morning to talk about the will of God, and I redirected the conversation at the beginning to talk about boxing because he had a guest on talking about boxing before me and whether boxing was, good and all that. And I threw a little monkey in the wrench by saying I don't think boxing is good if the main purpose is to make money. Like, if I'm going to like beat up William or get beat up by William just so that the two of us can earn $1 million.
Right. Doesn't exactly
There's
sound.
some
yeah.
questionable
Yeah,
nature to that.
yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, if I could, play a chess match with him and we each get $1 million, I think that would probably be okay.
Yeah,
But for
because
me to,
no
like,
damage is done besides
Right.
to your pride. Like,
yeah, right.
Exactly.
which, by the way, I would just learn to. Oh my goodness, one of the YouTube streams went offline again. Are we on like a set thing? We can only be live for 10 minutes or something.
Man, maybe some spiritual force does not want people to
Let me
learn about the
see.
will of God today.
I will just hang tight, everybody.
Okay, so
We'll be back.
I am going to move on to the next one because time waits for nobody, right? And so
Our stream certainly doesn't.
I apologize for all the difficulties that we're having, but if you're still with us, okay. So then he goes on and says, "This is very interesting. Is the will of God always fulfilled?" Okay, and people would kind of naturally say, "Well, no, because when." Crimes happen, that certainly is not the will of God, right? And when those terrorists flew their planes into the World Trade Center, that certainly wasn't the will of God, but that happened, right? So the will of God is not always fulfilled. What would you say, William?
I still think it is because he doesn't. Because he always wills the good, but back to the principle that all good things come out of a bad event.
Mm-hmm.
So even though a bad event may still happen, he still is going to will the good out of that bad thing.
Yeah, that's exactly what he's going to say.
Okay.
Yeah, and I love how he says this. He says something may fall outside the order of any particular active cause, but not outside the order of the universal cause, under which all particular causes are included. So this is the way I like to see it, is that God establishes the order of all things. Okay, so he establishes the universal cause. He could have set up a world where everything worked perfectly, where everything was his direct will and everybody is friendly and nobody ever lies or commits crimes and nobody ever kills anybody and nobody commits fraud or robbery or theft. And you'd have this perfect world. But what God did instead was that he created a world and he allowed what's called contingencies. He allowed people to step outside of his perfect will by sinning, because if he didn't allow that, we could not love him. You know, I teach a class at school, and I tell them all the time, I said, you know what, if I could just say, you know, snap my fingers and every single person in this class has to be perfectly attentive and perfectly obedient, and just
Every teacher would love that.
hanging on every word that I say, I still wouldn't like that.
No, yeah.
Because it wouldn't, first of all, be any reflection of anything that I've done. And secondly, I've taken away their free will. Because now I can say, you know what, Sally is so virtuous. Now, Fred over there, not so much. You know, but Sally's virtue stands in contrast to Fred's disobedience, right? So she can, but if I take away the freedom, then Sally's not virtuous. She's just a robot, right?
Right.
But at the same time, God, in this universal order, has said, okay, and kind of like what you're saying, William, before, is that when something gets out of line, he brings it back in some other way by bringing a good out of it, right?
Right,
And so
exactly.
the overall like schema is going to work according to God's will, even if he allows certain things to kind of fall away from it.
Right.
Okay. Does that make sense? Those of you who are
That does,
going in and out of our broadcast,
YouTube's trying to make me go crazy today. And
did something else go down?
No, just one's gone down twice, and the other one I'm just waiting for it now to go down a second time, any possible second. But so far we're holding steady. So I hope everyone found their way back to us again on our Back to
Yeah.
the Father YouTube page. But it does make sense. It feels like seems like one of the harder things to sometimes explain. To others especially.
Can I give an example?
Please give
so
examples.
I may, again, I don't know. We've been doing this for so many years. I don't remember what examples I've done, but William probably hasn't heard this for sure. So I've got a 10-year-old son, and let's say I say to myself, okay, I'm going to bring some candy home. And when I go home, if my wife says that Patrick was good today, I'm going to give him candy. If my wife says that Patrick was really bad today, I'll discipline him and I'll put him in the corner for 10 minutes. Okay. So I've allowed a contingency where Patrick can choose, you know, to be good or to not be good. And in one case, I'm going to reward him. And in another case, I'm going to discipline him. Okay, so it really doesn't matter what Patrick does. In either way, my will is fulfilled because I set up the plan.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah, so I set it up where, you know,
Either way,
I win.
you win.
Yeah.
Okay, this is going to drive me crazy because a few weeks ago in my young adult group that I help lead, this question came up, and I knew there was an example you used with like a father and son, and I was trying to explain it to help everybody, and I slaughtered it. Now I need to drill this in my memory.
Yeah.
As I was talking, everyone's looking at me, and I'm like, "This is not helping, is it?"
Yeah.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah. So yeah.
But that's a really good example, I think.
Yeah, I mean, so God says, okay, you know, you do something wrong, you sin, well, you're going to be brought back into an order through discipline or through punishment or some kind of thing, so another. So, all right. So I know you'll let us know if there's any comments out there, but hopefully, is this making sense? Those of you who are still with us, is this making sense on a scale of 1 to 10? And we've got a few more here that we're going to talk about. So the next one says, is the will of God changeable? I probably can guess that one because that kind of has to do with whether it's always
I think this might be the
fulfilled,
only
right?
one we get perfectly right on the first go. I'm going to say no.
Okay, let me read this. The will of God is entirely unchangeable. On this point, we must consider that to change the will is one thing. To will that certain things should be changed is another. Okay, stay with me. It is possible to will a thing to be done now and its contrary afterwards, and yet for the will to remain permanently the same, whereas the will would be changed if one should begin to will what before he had not willed. Okay, so I could say to my 10-year-old son, you know, you are not allowed to drive a car, right? But then, you know, 6 years from now, you can drive a car. And he'd be like, oh, your will changed. No, it didn't. Circumstances changed, right?
Right.
So now you can because you're 16, right?
Exactly.
So did my will change, or are there some little variables that, classic example, children cannot have relations with somebody of the opposite sex, but when they get married, okay, now you can,
Yeah, you
right?
can. Yeah.
So that very fundamental rule changed because circumstances changed, right?
Right.
So I think that's he's saying, but it doesn't change. And the obvious question that comes up with this is like, well, what about prayer? What about prayer? Don't I change God's mind when I pray and God wasn't going to give me that that the perfect husband for Sissel, or but now he says,
So wait on that one, by the way.
and if you're out there, by the way, wouldn't that be awesome if you met your future husband?
On Back to the Father.
You would have to invite me to the wedding.
You were never going to be it. No, I'm just kidding.
I mean, seriously. I mean, if it comes as a result of this show.
Yeah, I guess you do get that in that regard. Dave and I recently played a little bit of Matchmaker with some people we know here in North Texas, and I'm like, I just at least want a piece of cake. That's all I ask. Piece of the wedding cake, please.
Yeah, that would be kind of tacky. You're not invited, but we'll bring a piece of cake to you the next day. Okay, we don't necessarily want you to be at the wedding. Okay, so all right, so moving on. Does the will of God impose necessity on the things willed? Okay, and since the divine will is perfectly efficacious, it follows not only that things are done which God wills to be done, but also that they are done in the way that he wills. Now, God wills some things to be done necessarily and some contingently. We've already kind of talked about that. I gave an example, like he wills the fish to swim down the stream, and that fish is going to swim down the stream, right? The fish has nothing to say about it. He wills the bird to build a nest, okay? But does he will me to drive the speed limit on the way home tonight? Yeah, in his perfect will, yeah. But am I going to do it? Well. With all the traffic, with all the traffic we have, I probably will. I'll probably be going slower than the speed limit, right? Okay, so what he's going to say here is there are some things that he imposes necessity on, and some things that he doesn't. But again, that's that big, universal cause and all the things that in the world that play a part, and he allows contingencies within it. Okay. Does God will evil? Okay. Does God will evil? You probably know the answer to this one, right?
No.
You don't? You think you
No was our answer.
Because you're thinking, well, since
Our
there is
answer was
evil,
no.
okay.
Yeah,
You're not saying you don't know. You're saying
Right,
the
I'm
answer is
saying
no.
no is the
Okay.
answer.
Saying no, yeah.
Okay. Let me see if I can. Okay. He says, okay, look at this example here halfway through. Okay, about 5 lines down. The fornicator has merely pleasure for his object, and the deformity of sin is only an accompaniment. Now, the evil that accompanies one good is the privation of another good. Now, therefore, would evil be sought after, not even accidentally, unless the good that accompanies the evil were more desired than the good of which. So he's saying kind of what you mentioned before. Yeah. And he uses an example of look at this. When a lion kills a stag, his object is food, to obtain which the killing of the animal is only the means. Okay, so a stag or a deer being killed, that's kind of a sad thing, right? Mm-hmm. That's kind of an evil in the sense that something living died. But the lion's not thinking that.
Right.
The lion's like, man, I got a tasty stag here that I get to chow down on. So does God allow a lion to eat a stag? Does he allow us to kill chickens, to kill cows? It's kind of an evil with a little e, isn't it? Mm-hmm. I mean, that there's something has to die in order for us to. But that's the cycle of life, right?
Depends on who you're talking to. Vegans would very much say that was evil with a big E.
But but vegans have to kill something to live.
Oh, absolutely. Well, and also I think a lot of the delicious plants that we eat, a lot of the vegetables and stuff like that, farmers do have to kill animals to keep those plants going.
They have to.
They have to keep animals out of their fields somehow.
Oh, they have to kill them to keep.
They put
so
lots
something
of
has
things,
to die for the vegetarian to live,
yes,
right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So it's kind of a flawed argument usually.
Yeah, interesting. I've never heard that one before.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I do, a random aside, I always, as a kid, watching any nature documentary, when the guy's sitting there with the camera and they're showing the cutest little animal, and then it's the prey, and then the predator approaching it, and they're like, it's heartbreaking to watch, but we can't do anything to interrupt and must let nature take its course. And I'm like, I could not. I'd let that bunny have another day. Like, I would absolutely be running over there and grabbing the bunny and like running.
You know, that
drove me crazy.
You bring up a good question, because I've had a lot of like constrictor snakes in my life, and there was a time in my life when I wouldn't say I take joy, but I found it interesting to like throw a mouse in with a boa constrictor and see the snake, you know, eat the mouse and constrict it and all that. Or I used to, you know, get frogs and throw them in with water snakes, and the frogs are jumping all over the place and all that. But it's kind of weird to take pleasure in that.
Yeah.
You know, you can get frozen rats and frozen mice, and then they'll still eat them. You know, but I don't know. I think boys much more so than girls take it's almost like a sadism. Like you enjoy seeing something, you know, get killed. I know you wouldn't enjoy that, would you?
It's not pleasant. I mean, my brother caught a few different animals growing up, and we would definitely feed it some things, and there was some fascination with it, but I ultimately didn't like it.
Mm-hmm. We had a rat one. We had a snake one time, my buddy and I, and it was like a rat snake or something, and so we went and bought a rat, you know, and a rat snake would eat a rat, right? And we put it in with it, and they kind of both went to their own corners, and nothing happened. And we were thinking, come on, snake, you know, and it was the proper size so that the snake would, you know, be able to eat the rat and all that. So then we got bored, and we put the lid on the aquarium, and we went inside and came back about 30 minutes later. The rat had eaten the head off the snake. And so it was a total reversal. The rat had killed the snake. So then, being punky little kids that we are, we're thinking, okay, we went down to the woods, and we got a bunch of scorpions, and we threw like 5 scorpions in with the rat, because we're trying to kill the rat. You know, we don't want a rat, right? We wanted the snake, right? So now we're trying to kill the rat with scorpions. Well, the rat methodically went up to each scorpion, grabbed its little tail, bit it off, and ate the scorpions. So I was like, man, this rat would not die, you know?
That is bizarre.
So I'm not going to tell you what happened next. But,
thank you.
The rat's no longer alive, let's just say. This was about 40 years ago.
Freeze-dried rat is what, and Lori's saying ew, Dave, by the way.
Yeah, I'm sorry to go there, right? So, okay,
This took a change.
So we're down to our last 2. I want to read this one interestingly. I'll throw out the question, does God have free will? Okay, think about that. Have you ever thought about that? Does God have free will? And Thomas is going to say yes and no.
Of course he is. Someone last night, we were, I think we did a Q&A with my priest at my parish, and I think someone asked a question. He's like, well, yes and no. And under my breath, I was like, that's very Aquinas of you.
Yeah. I mean, you know, it's, but, you know, yes and no is kind of, so listen, I'm just going to read this. Okay, and then let's chat about this amongst ourselves, okay? We have free will with respect to what we will, not of necessity, nor by natural instinct. Okay, so, which I think what that means is like that donut example, right? Yeah. You did not have free will in regard to the desire for it, okay? I mean, we know that's true. I mean, I didn't ask to desire a donut, okay? Right. So we don't have free will in a lot of regards, okay? I don't have free will in regard to whether I get tired tonight.
Right.
Okay. I also, Thomas would say, echoing Aristotle, is that we don't have free will in our desire for happiness. Okay. That is innate in us. We all want to be happy, and we cannot not want to be happy. Okay, so then he says, for our will to be happy does not appertain to free will, as I just said, but to natural instinct. We naturally want to be happy. Hence, other animals that are moved to act by natural instinct are not said to be moved by free will. Okay, the snake wanting the mouse, the bird wanting the worm, that's not free will. It's natural. Mm-hmm. Since then, God necessarily wills his own goodness, but other things not necessarily. He has free will with respect to what he does not necessarily will. That's interesting. Okay, if he necessarily wills a bird to build a nest, does that mean that's not part of God's free will? That's what it seems to be saying. But if he wills Sissel to, whatever, practice temperance,
He usually does. Yeah.
that's free will, because there's a possibility that it won't happen. Okay, and she chugs 10 beers tonight. That would be very intemperate to do that. I don't see that happening.
No, I
but
don't like beer.
So I don't. To me, it's really interesting, because it means that only certain parts of the divine will are free will, and not all of them.
Interesting.
Okay.
A little confusing.
That
but
is very confusing.
Yeah, I'll get it.
I don't know. There's a lot of interesting stuff out there. Any other comments out there among social media land? We're down to our last article of this 19th question of prima pars of the Summa. And I'll throw it out this way, because what he's going to basically say, and he says it in a very Thomistic way, whether the will of expression is to be distinguished in God. What he means is, are there passions in God? Okay, does God, it says in Scripture, God gets angry, God.
Old Testament,
Yeah,
especially.
very, very Old Testament kind of thing. So would you say God has passions? I heard a talk one time where somebody, a professional theologian, said, God does have passions. God had feelings, because he had, we got to be able to relate to God, and certainly he's not just this passionless, feelingless being that,
Yeah, I mean, Jesus did become man.
Yeah.
So, he did did experience things like
Jesus had passions.
yes, Jesus did.
Yeah.
Like, he did experience, like, sadness and happiness. Like, when Lazarus died, he was sad.
But what about God? Like God,
the first person of
the Blessed Trinity.
Trinity,
God is God in his essence.
Yeah.
Does he have any passions? Okay, so let me read this.
Yeah, let's see what St. Thomas Aquinas says.
Some things are said of God in their strict sense, others by metaphor. When certain human passions are predicated of the Godhead, metaphorically, this is done because of a likeness in the effect. Hence, a thing that is in us a sign of some passion is signified metaphorically in God under the name of that passion. Thus, with us, it is usual for an angry man to punish, so that punishment becomes an expression of anger. So when somebody punishes, you assume they're angry. Therefore, punishment itself is signified by the word anger, when anger is attributed to God. So when God punishes in Scripture, we assume, he is angry. Okay, so we've assumed, we've assigned a passion to him. In the same way, what is usually, my screen got blocked here. What does it say? In the same way, what is usually with us an expression